What happens when a conflict suddenly chokes off one of the world's most vital energy arteries? We're going to break down the anatomy of a potential crisis at the Strait of Hormuz and really dig into what it would mean for the entire global economy. Just think about that question for a second. Imagine waking up and a fifth of the world's oil is just gone. A disruption in this one tiny waterway could send massive shockwaves through the whole global economy. Look at that number. 1/5. That's how much of the world's entire oil supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz. So, when that flow gets cut off, the impact isn't just a small ripple, it's a tsunami. Okay, so let's start right at the epicenter of this whole thing. Section 1, Crisis at the Choke Point. We're going to explore why this one single location holds so much power over all of us. The easiest way to think about the Strait of Hormuz is as a critical artery. It's the main route that connects these huge energy producers in the Middle East to all their markets. We're talking Asia, Europe, North America, you name it. If the global economy has a pulse, a huge part of it flows right through here. And here's the thing, it's not just about oil. The strait also handles about 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas, that's LNG, and, get this, a staggering 30% of nitrogen-based fertilizer. So this isn't just an energy crisis, it could very quickly become a food security crisis too. And if you're wondering just how bad it could be, listen to this. The International Energy Agency, the IEA, has said a situation like this could be worse than both of the infamous 1970s oil shocks combined. Why? Well, because back then, it was basically just an oil disruption. Today, it's oil, gas, and other really strategic stuff all at the same time. And that points to a really crucial difference. Think back to 2020. The pandemic caused a demand shock, right? People just stopped driving and flying, so we stopped using as much energy. A Hormuz crisis is the opposite. It's a supply shock. The energy is suddenly taken away from the market, which forces everyone to violently adjust. And believe me, that is a much more dangerous scenario for the economy. All right, so let's move on and see how this all builds. Section 2, the global price shock. This is where the crisis stops being about a faraway waterway and starts hitting your wallet no matter where you live. The immediate impact is, it's clear and it's brutal. In just the first few weeks of a hypothetical conflict, you could see European gas prices jump 66%. Brent crude oil, the global benchmark, could be up 50%. And fertilizer? That shoots up by 30%. And remember, these aren't just abstract numbers. These are real costs that get passed down to industries and to you. One analyst put it perfectly. They said prices are the transmission mechanism of the crisis. That's how a disruption in one tiny part of the world spreads absolutely everywhere, putting this immense inflationary pressure on everything from your heating bill to the food you buy at the grocery store. And that leads experts to ask a really sobering question. We've seen prices around $120, even $150 a barrel cause huge problems before. But what on earth happens if a long conflict pushes oil all the way to $200 a barrel? So here's the thing about that $200 number. It isn't just a high price, it's a tipping point. It could very well trigger a global recession, force factories and industrial plants to just shut down, absolutely cripple air travel, and force a huge shift back to remote work, not by choice, but because it's too expensive to commute. We'd be talking about destroying over 10 million barrels a day of demand simply because the world couldn't afford to use the energy anymore. Which naturally brings us to Section 3, the scramble for solutions. Okay, the main artery is blocked. What are the alternatives? Is there a plan B? Well, there are a few options. We're mainly talking about 3 key pipelines that were designed to bypass the strait. You've got Saudi Arabia's East-West pipeline that goes to the Red Sea. The UAE has one called the ADCOP pipeline, and there's another one to get crude out of northern Rock to the Mediterranean. But here is the problem, and it's a huge one. The scale of the shortfall is just immense. The world would lose something like 16 million barrels of oil flow per day from the strait. The total combined capacity of all those pipelines? It's only about 6 million barrels per day. So they're super important for sure, but they're nowhere near enough to replace what's lost. Now, a crisis like this also has a major political side, of course. You get statements like this one from former President Trump, who argued that, hey, since the U.S. is a huge oil producer now, the country isn't really affected. But is that true? Well, most experts point out that even a so-called energy-independent nation can't escape the indirect effects. Oil is a global commodity. It's priced globally. So a price shock anywhere means higher gas prices for American consumers, period. It fuels inflation, which makes the Federal Reserve's job on interest rates way more complicated. And on top of all that, U.S. refineries are still built to use specific types of heavy crude, and a lot of that is still imported. So yeah, it's everyone's problem. All of this brings us to our final section, lessons for a fragile world. So what does a crisis like this really teach us about our global supply chains?
The first and maybe biggest lesson is that our global lifelines are just incredibly vulnerable. Hormuz is just one of several of these critical choke points. You've also got the Strait of Malacca in Asia, Bab el-Mandeb near Yemen, and, of course, the Suez and Panama Canals. A serious disruption at any one of those could spark a global crisis.
So the takeaways for the future are pretty clear, and there are sort of two sides to it. For the energy suppliers, the lesson is they have to invest in infrastructure that creates bypasses, more pipelines, more options. And for the consuming nations, the lesson is to really pursue an all-of-the-above energy strategy. That means not just oil and gas, but seriously investing in alternatives like nuclear and renewables to build more resilience into the system. And get this, even if the conflict just magically ended tomorrow, you can't just flip a switch and go back to normal. Experts figure it would take at least 2 to 3 months just to get the ships moving again, sort out inventories, and get supply chains flowing properly. The damage has a very long tail. Which leaves us with one final and really important question. We've seen just how fragile these lifelines are. So the real challenge now is, are we actually using these lessons to build a more resilient and more secure future?